Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Grinding Gear Games have today given us a batch of 39 of the new Transfigured gems. A really quick recap, these are going to be something you'll get access to through completing the Labyrinth in PathOfExile Affliction and also in the PathOfExile base game. So this is not just League content, this applies to the base game as well. For example, when you complete the Labyrinth, you might receive a reward, which is a craft for a gem that enables you to turn, for example, a gem like Absolution into a gem like Absolution of Inspiring. There may be multiple copies of Absolution that are transfigured, and if you don't like the one you're offered, you can elect not to go ahead with the craft. Although I think most of the time you're probably going to want to put in a gem that's qualityed, and then you're going to want to swap it over if you get something else. It's going to be pretty corner cases where you elect not to take these, and that'll be if you get something that is complete and utter rubbish for almost everyone in the game. So, there are going to be two major things that have come out today in the way of gems. There's these 39 these 39 transfigured gems, and there's also all of the hard numbers on all of the gems that have been changed in some way, which is pretty much every gem in the game. This is the longest post I think that's ever existed, maybe equal longest with patch 3.15 Expedition in terms of the changes to the number of gems. So let me just quickly give the link to these gems just into chat here. So this in chat is the link that shows where all of these transfigured gems are. This has just been posted in the last 10 minutes by Grinding Gear Games. Not 10, 20 minutes ago. So it's very new news. If you've just looked at their site and you haven't found that, then that's the reason. Anyways, let's go through each of these in turn, starting with Absolution of Inspiring. So, this damages enemies in an area, applying a debuff for a short duration, standard for Absolution. If a non-unique enemy dies while affected by the debuff, the corpse will be consumed to summon a Sentinel of Absolution for a secondary duration, or to refresh the duration and life of an existing one instead if you have the maximum number of them. This is generally what Absolution tends to do. So this is dealing physical damage with 50% lightning conversion. And we're just trying to have a look here. Increases and reductions to minion damage also apply to this skill's damage at 250% of their value. So, it looks like here that anything that you've got on your character that's boosting your minion damage actually makes you better at firing off Absolution as well. 25% chance to summon a Sentinel of Absolution on hitting a rare or unique enemy. And you also have a maximum of only 2 summoned Sentinels of Absolution. Now, let's get a quick look at the numbers here that you've got. So, with Absolution, generally, it's 3 summoned Sentinels of Absolution normally. 1310 is the top line physical damage, and here it is also 1310. Your durations are 1 and 10 seconds, whereas with normal Absolution, that's the same. And minions have CDR, which I think is a lost stat here. Minions do not indeed have CDR here. So the key thing you're looking at here is that your damage with Absolution is substantially higher if your character invests into minion damage, but in exchange for that, you get less minions, and the minions are less powerful because they don't have that CDR. Is this going to be worth it? I think for most people, my first thought is that the original Absolution will be better, but that this will have some use cases where you invest just in a different way in your character. This is going to be a building puzzle, and ultimately you're going to value different gear here. And there's an interesting comment that's being made in chat at the moment discussing how this might interact with Spiritual Aid. Now, Spiritual Aid is something I should probably bring up on stream, so let me just bring up the POE wiki and do that without flashbanging everyone. Spiritual Aid. I might know if I actually type that in correctly. Spiritual Aid. Okay, so Spiritual Aid is a notable that causes effects that modify minion damage to also affect your character, and this is quite a powerful mechanic in the game. It's something that is very good early game because you can get essences that boost your minion damage, and this can then increase all of your damage. It becomes universal player damage, which can be a fairly hard stat to come by sometimes. Anyways, that's Spiritual Aid there. Definitely something that we need to investigate the way that that works. I don't know if this is going to mean you get 350% of the value of that or not. I'm genuinely unsure on how that works. So we will see on that. I like the comment that someone's making in chat there that this makes you the third Sentinel of Absolution. I think that is definitely a good way to think of it. You will be casting Absolution more than usual. One last thing that needs to be said about Absolution of Inspiring. They both cost 26 mana. That is a lot. This gem is expensive to cast, and if you're going to be focusing on the inspiration aspect of this, you are going to have a lot of issues with mana. So do keep that in mind if you're keen to use Absolution of Inspiring. It is going to be a big mana drain. Animate Guardian of Smiting. Now this is one that GGG have shown a video of, and this is quite an interesting one. So this just here says nothing really clear. Like honestly, there's nothing really clear here. 40% increased minion movement speed, can use items up to level 100, minion deals 38% more damage, but it just says here that it uses Smite of Divine Judgment and also importantly ignores weapon restrictions. So if you're someone who likes feeding a Kingmaker to their Animate Guardian, you will be able to do that here. But it doesn't really give you all that much clarification on exactly what's happening here. Hopefully we get Smite of Divine Judgment. I'm just going to check ahead if we do. Smite's a red gem, isn't it? I'm just going to make sure of that. I think Smite's red. Pretty sure it is. Yeah, Smite's red. Okay, so let's just check. We have... Doesn't look like we have a Smite of Divine Judgment here, so really we don't know what this is going to do. This looked cool though. This looked like it was using Vile Smite when it was going off, so hopefully that's the case there. I just had a request to boost my volume. Unfortunately, oh hang on, yes I can. I can give myself +3. Let me do that. Let's go to 6. Why am I unable to do that? 6, there we go. Okay, I've just given myself +3 DB. Hopefully that works for you. Arc of Surging is next. It's alphabetical and nothing past D. That makes a lot of sense. Arc of Surging is next. So here we seem to have a lot of damage. 2159 is a very large amount of damage. 230%. I just want to check what the actual damage is on Arc. And it is dealing 1122 damage, which is 120%. So Arc of Surging is dealing approximately double the damage, with a rounding error downwards. So let's say 92% more damage than the base Arc does. This is going to be one that reaches to a targeted enemy and then splits to simultaneously hit several other enemies. Modifiers to the number of times that you're going to chain instead apply to the number of targets the beam splits towards. Now this is going to deal more damage to a medium number of targets, but less damage overall because Arc is something that scales a lot with the number of chains it's got left. So if you're using gem level 20 Arc, you have chain +8 and you've got 15% more damage with hits and ailments per remaining chain. So that is going to be 120% more damage. That is going to be 264% effective added damage. Instead, you've got 230%. Arc of Surging is more consistent, less damaging. So that is going to be a slightly weaker setup, I think. Now, one thing that's important to note with Animate Guardian and people talking about minion more damage and the like, a lot of minion more damage rolls have been rolled into base stats. Like things that were on gems have been rolled into the base stats of items instead. Arc of Oscillating is next. So this is going to reach out from the caster to a targeted enemy and chain. Each time it chains, it will also chain a secondary arc to another enemy, but this secondary arc cannot chain further. Now this is only effective added damage 60%, so it is less damage than base arc, but it has 50% more damage with hits and ailments for each remaining chain. That's a lot. So if you have maximum numbers of chains, let's just start with baseline arc. This is 264% more damage with, 264% base damage with hits and ailments on the first target. Arc of Oscillating is going to be a total of 60% base plus 350%, so that's 270%. This is the most single target damage that Arc gives, and each time it chains, it's going to spread further. So Arc of Oscillating hits the first target harder than baseline Arc. 270% of base damage feels good enough to use. It's then going to spread through the crowd, but it's going to fall off pretty hard. This is going to be weaker if you fire into a pack of monsters and the pack is big enough that it can bounce back to the original target, at least if you are hit based. If you are inflicting ignites and proliferating, then Arc of Oscillating may well be the best choice. Additionally, it's going to have the best damage projection of all of the arcs as well. So Arc of Oscillating is looking like it's in a pretty good state there. That's my first thought. I like this gem. I do not like Arc of Surging very much, although I'm sure that someone will find some use for Arc of Surging. Arc of Surging maybe if you had a tightly bunched up bunch of bosses, boss of Volcano map. That's going to be a context where Arc of Surging is going to be the best of the Arc gems, but there is no way that I am going to even level up a copy of this specific Arc quality just for that one boss that you can manage just fine without it. Arc of Oscillating looks like the one to go with, and baseline Arc is fine as well, but this is just better. Barrage of Volley Fire. So here we have, this is going to fire a huge chunk of extra projectiles simultaneously on the first and the final ones. So let's go through everything that we've got here. We've got 4 projectiles sequentially. First and final shots fire 10 additional projectiles simultaneously. This is going to basically fire 2 bursts of projectiles that hit a fairly tight area of the screen, and then you will be doing a little bit of extra damage to a single target. I just want to check how that compares to baseline Barrage in numbers. So this is going to fire 6 projectiles sequentially and is 54.6% of base damage for 11 mana, whereas Barrage of Volley Fire is a little bit more added damage and is also 11 mana. So I think this is going to be worse single target damage. I feel like this is like Barrage of Volley Fire is where you want to use only Barrage. You want it as both your clear and your single target. You're willing to compromise a bit on the amount of single target you do, and then you get that extra bonus. Okay, we have Blade Blast of Unloading next. And this is going to be a effectiveness of added damage 250%. I'll just check that number on here as well. Blade Blast, I don't need to control F down here. So Blade Blast is only 70% effectiveness of added damage, and it is 16 mana. Blade Blast of Unloading. So this is massively higher damage. Let me just get the... Deals spell damage in an area around you. If you have Blade Vortex blades orbiting you, it detonates them and adds extra damage for them. So this is only having synergies with Blade Vortex, whereas default Blade Blast no longer has synergy with Blade Vortex. So this is an interesting one. This is basically saying, I want to transform the way Blade Blast works to have the sometimes undesirable synergies that Blade Blast has in conjunction with Blade Vortex in 3.22. This way, you can play Blade Vortex and Blade Blast together and not use the unloading version. And then in that situation, you can just use Blade Blast without setting off your Blade Vortexes that you probably want to keep. But if you are willing to set off your Blade Vortexes, then this is going to be really good. This is just basically a different skill. This is quite interesting to have this new option where you can play Blade Vortex alongside Blade Blast without detonating it. I don't think many people are going to do that, but it is just a cool additional little option. So people are asking what's the deal with Arc of Oscillating. I just wanted to quickly clarify that because it has, on your first chain, it has something like 350% more damage. Even though the effectiveness of added damage is only 60%, that doesn't matter. That's actually really high, because it's going to hit the first target harder than any of the other versions of Arc. So that's the way that, that's what's up with Arc of Oscillating. It's going to be a harder hitter than it looks at first glance because it's just so many extra chains. Now we have, so anyways, that's Blade Blast of Unloading. It's doing a lot of damage if you are willing to go really, really hard on the Blade Vortex setup, but you're going to need to then detonate a whole bunch of your, you're going to need to then set up a whole bunch of Blade Vortex casting. I feel like you want to automate Blade Vortex somehow, and maybe this is one of those cases where you want cast when damage taken Blade Vortex on some sort of loop. If you can do that, Blade Vortex on a loop with cast when damage taken, then Blade Blast for your heavy damage, that may be a way to go. But that's going to be a really strange one. Yeah, only the final blast gets the maximum AoE, I believe that's correct. I'm not really thinking of this as AoE, I'm thinking of this as just a staggeringly hard single target hit. This is going to be one of those skills that's going to really be weird to play around with. Vast majority of players I would not recommend this for. This is going to be something if you like having not just a 2-button setup, but a lot of buttons to press. Because you're probably going to want to have your Blade Vortex, unless you automate your Blade Vortex, you're going to want to have something with Blade Vortex. You're going to want to have a bunch of other things. Yeah, it's going to be wild to work this one out. Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation. So this is a 100% baseline damage. Deals spell damage equal to 580% of equipped dagger. If 2 daggers are equipped, you only get one of them. This is cool. This is a really difficult one to assess. So, unfortunately here, very unfortunately, Rebuke of the Vile is not a dagger. This sounds like something where you can do some really cool stuff with this if you can get yourself the right type of dagger. I want to know how this interacts with pneumatic daggers, hollow point daggers, and the like. Does this automatically, does this grant the ability for elemental damage to poison if that damage has been supplied by a pneumatic dagger? I believe the answer to be no, but I would like to see a definite clarification on that. Dagger Blade Blast could be very good with Volcanus. That's a good point from coming up from chat. Let's just have a quick look at Volcanus' stats, because one of those items I always forget exists. Volcanus is a large amount of physical damage, a large amount of fire damage, and then it has a number of additional mods that are related to attacks. That's right, it's the weapon that gives you Avatar of Fire on and off. And it's very good, except for the fact that Avatar of Fire can be a bit clunky at times. White Wind is another thing that people are mentioning, and that is indeed a very hard-hitting skill. So let's get a quick look at this. White Wind is doing... If you get the right White Wind rolls, which is actually going to be one, you don't care about the attack speed. So let's say that you have a White Wind whose rolls are 188, 312, 11%. This doesn't actually have much utility as an attack weapon because it requires a much higher level of attack speed to be useful. But this is going to be something like 188 to 312. That's going to be 250 damage that this is providing. You're then getting you're then getting 580% of 250. Which is 1,450 flat cold added on to this weapon. White Wind is indeed, yeah, it is base weapon. So that's a lot of base damage for a 650 millisecond cast time skill. I think that this is going to be a pretty strong, pretty strong setup, but something that's important to note is that you are competing with weapons that could give you an enormous amount of spell damage in this situation. I'm just trying to think if there is a dagger that simultaneously has the Glyphic prefix or the Exalter's prefix or similar, which is Glyphic being one of the highest tier percent spell damage rolls, or the Exalter's, not Exalter's, Magister's prefix, which is +1 to all skill gems. But it's got that simultaneously with having decent attack damage. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but we'll have a quick look. Someone's just asking, they've just joined the stream. Yeah, this hasn't been going long. Just go back to the start and jump it at 150, 175% base speed, and you'll be able to catch up pretty quickly. Like, we've only been going for 20 minutes. So if you go at 175, you'll catch up in 30 minutes. If you go at 200%, you'll catch up in 20. Custom critical strikes with this dagger is an interesting thought. So if you have a pure attack-based dagger, and this could be White Wind, it could be something that's some monstrous essence craft, then you could use Blast of Dagger Detonation as attached to cast when on critical strike. That could be really interesting. That is an excellent idea, Kvoden. I really like the idea of this. Just beware that I do not believe that the poison daggers, the hollow point dagger, pneumatic dagger, and pressurized dagger, I do not believe that this is going to grant Blade Blast the capacity to poison the damage, even though that damage is supplied by the pneumatic dagger. So you're going to need to get you're going to need to get capacity to poison somewhere. Also, I do not believe that tinctures, if you're playing in the Affliction Challenge League, I don't believe that tinctures are going to grant Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation the capacity to poison. All in all, I'm also really interested to see how this scales with gem level. That 580%, I'm guessing that scales with gem level. I'm also guessing it's the quality stat, but maybe base radius is one of the stats that changes with level. There's a whole lot of things that are going on there, but basically, this is one of the coolest things we've seen in a while. I think that this is something I'm excited to experiment with, but I'm not exactly certain what that experiment would be, other than it would start with White Wind. If you get this early, White Wind is the way to go. And if you're wanting to play Custom Critical Strike, honestly, as much as the Assassin Ascendancy is weak at the moment at deep endgame, it's actually pretty good early on. So this is really good. And people are pointing out that, yeah, 2.9 meter base radius is pretty good as well. So yeah, tinctures are not necessarily what you're looking for here, though. That is definitely something I mentioned in the last video that I did, which was about, I think went up about 10 hours ago, that there's a bit of an FAQ about how tinctures work, and it's important to note that it only applies those base stats to your weapon attack damage. Would Battle Mage double up on this? I believe the answer is yes, but I don't think that this is the best use of Battle Mage. I want to test things out with this. There's a lot of ways you could go with this, but my first thought is you want capacity for all of your damage to poison, and once you've got that capacity for all your damage to poison, which is not the easiest thing in the world to get, but, or at least, yeah, I think that's the first way to go. The second way is just to make this a physical or chaos dagger, and then to scale up your damage with poison. That's my first thought on that, but I'm not convinced I'm right. This is one of those ones where I've got to think further about it than I can on a live stream. Blade Flurry of Incision. So let's just bring up the stats on Blade Flurry, because who remembers what this gem... I mean, I remember what it does, but who remembers the exact details? 160% attack speed, 49% base damage, and it charges up after 6 stages and 25% more damage with it. So 30% more critical strike. I do not like this. I think I would just much rather have 25% more damage with hits and ailments for each stage. 75 to 113 added damage. What's the... Yeah, Blade Flurry of Incision. This looks like a brick to me. That's my thought there. But people can answer that. People are asking about Blade Trap and its interaction with tinctures. This was confirmed by GGG to be something that does work. Blade Trap and tinctures, yes. If your tinctures apply to weapon attacks that are done through proxy, but they don't apply to things that your character does that aren't weapon attacks. Blade Trap of Greatswords. This is cool. So this allows Blade Trap to work with two-handers. Here again, we just need to check the exact numbers on this. So Blade Trap is 96% of base damage, and it rotates 5 times. The trap lasts 5 seconds, and it rotates +1 time if dual wielding. Base radius is 2.2 meters. So we are looking at here, base radius of 2.8 meters, so longer radius. Attack damage is quite a bit better, so that's 140%. This is, yeah, that's a lot more damage. And then you have, yeah, so it only lasts 4 seconds, and it doesn't clarify how many times it rotates. I'm assuming it rotates once per second. So basically, Blade Trap of Greatswords is much more do your damage fast and do it to a wider area. I feel like this is just better than the baseline Blade Trap, except for a couple of corner cases people will come up with. But generally, Blade Trap looks a lot better this league. You've got the poisons that allow all your damage to... the tinctures that allow all your damage to poison. They're really good with Rebuke of the Vile and baseline Blade Trap. So if you can get your hands on Rebuke of the Vile, which is only tier 3 rarity now, it used to be tier 2, then that's an option you've got. You also have Blade Trap of Greatswords. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff that's going on here. There's an interesting comment that someone's made in chat here that Ice Nova compares more favorably to White Wind Dagger Blade Blast. So let's just have a quick look at the cast timing on that. So I'm just going to go back quickly to Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation. So this is a 650 millisecond cast time. We need to then check out Ice Nova. Ice Nova is a 700 millisecond cast time, and that's probably why it does more damage. Yeah, that's a good point, that it may well be that the superior thing to get going... Well, you also get all the physical damage as well. You also get all that physical damage on the Dagger Detonation, so there's a bunch of stuff. I want to kind of move on, though. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on any particular gem in this stream. Anything that jumps out at me as exciting enough to build around might get its own video, but for now I just want to cover all of them, so I'm going to keep pushing on at this point. Blade Trap of Greatswords is what we've just been discussing. Blade Trap of Laceration. This is interesting. So this is going to be a bleed oriented Blade Trap version. So 180% of base, and it only rotates once. That's really cool. So swings 2 copies of your attack dagger, equipped dagger, claw, or one-handed sword around it in a circle, each damaging enemies it spins through. This is dealing a lot of bleed damage. This is what 180% times 79% more, so that is 322.2% base damage. It's got all the clunkiness of Blade Trap attached to it, but that is still a very large amount of damage. If you inflict a bleed, you're really going to have to get your chance to bleed up to 100% on this. But this is going to do some really intriguing stuff here. So, lots of things going on with Blade Trap of Laceration. This is a genuinely pretty strong looking thing. On the rarity of these, this is something we don't really know yet. We'll find that out over time, but my understanding, my first thought is that unless some of these are unusually rare, you should be able to get them with like maybe 5 or 6 labs. Unless 1 or 2 of them are unusually rare. Now, I'm just thinking if there's anything else. Could you stack 8 bleeds with this really quickly? I think you could, and I'm kind of unsure whether I want to or not, whether you want to be Crimson Dance in conjunction here. So for those of you that aren't that familiar with bleed, I'll just quickly bring up Crimson Dance so that you can see the interaction we're talking about here. Crimson Dance allows you to inflict bleed 8 times on an enemy instead of 1. All of them deal damage. Bleeding doesn't scale up when the monster is moving, and you deal 50% less damage with bleeding. Basically, this is a huge amount of additional damage if you are at 8 stacks, but it's also considerably less if the monsters are moving and things like that. Just for the link of the gems is there. There you go. So let's just, compare this to Lacerate proper. Lacerate. So this is going to be 154% base damage and 88% more. So, but this has attack physical damage as well. So it's a bit hard to compare this exactly, but I think you'll find, yeah, Lacerate may actually come out ahead of Blade Trap of Laceration. Blade Trap of Laceration does have that advantage of if you're using Crimson Dance, it can preload. It can also be a safer playstyle at times, but they're competing with each other. And let's just jump on to the next thing here. Bladefall of Volleys. So, Bladefall, I really need to check out the numbers here, but let's just have a quick sense here. Each one is wider and more damaging than the last. I think from memory, Bladefall has the opposite interaction. So, this is dealing 100% base damage, 23 mana, 700 milliseconds, and 6% is the cast time. Let's just bring up the baseline version here. So, this is Bladefall. Okay, so Bladefall is 140% added damage effectiveness. So that probably means that Bladefall is just 40% more damage. Let's confirm that. 600 to 900 minus change. And Bladefall of Volleys is, yeah, that's about 40% less, as we thought. And then each specific thing is... So this is firing enemies in 4 ranges... So, Bladefall of Volleys, it's 10% more damage per volley. 7 volleys is a lot. And I'm getting strong Glacial Cascade mechanics here. Bladefall Volleys is a hybrid between existing skills like Bladefall and Glacial Cascade. Now, something that's important, there's more damage per volley should work with ailments. This feels like a poison skill. The main thing that's going to impact how good Bladefall of Volleys is how condensed these volleys are. That's going to be the one that really determines exactly what's going to be going on there. It's interesting, someone's saying in chat that there was a really broken looking Wintertide brand that was listed. We'll see what happens there, because they've only gone up to D in the alphabet on the base skills, so maybe that was something that is actually still in the game, but that they got that wrong. They just provided a paste bin with direct comparisons, did they? I won't bring that up because that'll flashbang everyone, but I can't... unfortunately, my auto mod will eat anything that you post with it, but it's something that'll be able to be found on Reddit. Bladefall of Impaling is next. So this is 140% effectiveness of added damage as well. Only 5 volleys compared to 7 for Bladefall of Volleys. And this one has... Oh, that's interesting. This is a non-crit build setup. Now, you impale enemies on hit for certain with crits. So this is like, you want to scale critical strike chance and not critical strike multiplier. I can never remember if that's Ungol's Harmony or if it's Maryland's Fallacy. Let's have a quick look at this. Ungol's Harmony is... Yeah, it's Ungol's Harmony. That's the one that you might consider using with this. Although I think you would go the +2... I think you would go +2. And then there's 10% base crit you're mentioning there. Oh yeah, that's a big deal too. So, I think this is like... This says use me with Ungol's Harmony, but Ungol's Harmony probably isn't good enough here. But just... There's going to be builds around this. It's going to be a... I'm just trying to think how else you would do it. Like, maybe if... You probably don't want to stack power charges on this, because you'd probably just go crit if you were. The critical strikes not dealing extra damage is pain, but critical strikes impaling is still pretty strong. This is one of those ones that's just a fundamentally very, very different skill. This does not fit on most builds, but it will have its uses. So this is kind of intriguing. Definitely a really interesting thing here. Next up we have Bladestorm of Uncertainty. So, spinning attack, damaging enemies around you, and creating a random Bladestorm. The Bladestorm repeatedly damages enemies based upon your weapon damage and attack time for a duration. Blood Bladestorms are stationary and cause bleeding. Sand Bladestorms move slowly forwards and blind enemies. So, you're going to get both of these things, which will be interesting. And you still have other stats. I want to compare this to baseline Bladestorm. So Bladestorm is 150% attack damage versus this is 180% attack damage, 70% attack speed. Okay, so Bladestorm then has 108% more damage with bleeding when in stance, 12% more attack speed when you're in a Blood Bladestorm. So you're getting more damage with bleeding, but that's about the same. Sand Bladestorms grant move speed, and Bladestorm deals 50% less damage with hits and ailments. I feel like this is like mostly better, but it's mostly better in a longer fight because you'll be able to get both of them down. So that's kind of quite different there, Bladestorm. It's Bladestorm of Uncertainty. You'd really need to play with this to get a sense as to whether it's any good or not. I'm not willing to say that this is necessarily better or worse, just that it's an interesting setup. Yeah, so it looks like you can't control which of the Bladestorms you make. But you got a maximum of 4 Bladestorms at a time, so you may well end up getting both of them down. Blight of Contagion. So let's just have a quick look at this. Apply a debuff to enemies in front of you, which deals chaos damage over time. Blight is that really short-range channeling skill that's really, really clunky. Enemies which aren't already debuffed by Blight are also hindered for a shorter secondary duration, slowing their movement. Continued channeling adds layers of damage to the debuff, each with their own duration. The damaging debuff is spread by contagion. So let's just bring up Blight baseline, because this is going to live or die based upon its damage. Here we have 284 base chaos damage per second, and this can have up to 20 layers of damage on it. And then let's just have a look at the key details here. This is much higher base damage, but can only have 5 layers. So this caps out much lower. A cast time of 250 milliseconds versus a cast time of 300 milliseconds. So Blight of Contagion is a very short casting time skill in comparison to normal Blight. This is a much faster playstyle. It has much less top-end damage, but Blight is not really something you can channel easily anyway. And it's going to spread everywhere. This is a this is a really cool setup here. This is doing a lot here. I think where they're talking about reduced movement speed while you're channeling, reduced movement speed, I think that's the monsters that you're hitting with it. So I don't think that applies there. So 5 stacks instead of 20. It is definitely a bunch worse. And okay, let's just have a quick look here. Blight of Atrophy is the next thing here. So 284 base chaos per second. This is basically the same as a baseline. Can have 20 layers. And this is causing them to suffer reduced life recovery as well. This is slower. So the base stats on this look pretty similar to what we've got on baseline Blight. But we have a whole bunch of extra things. We have a whole bunch of extra text to read here, which is always the tricky stuff. So we've got base duration 1 second, secondary duration is 4 seconds. How does that compare? That is, base duration 2.8 and secondary duration is 1. Aha! So Blight of Atrophy, you need to keep channeling it. You're getting a bit more out of it, but you have to rechannel it faster. I think that's the hinder goes for longer. I do not like this in general. But if you're using using Blight from a totem, maybe this could be all right. But this is the key thing is the duration swap. So the slow duration and the reduced life duration, the reduced life regen rate on the enemy, that is something that lasts longer with Blight of Atrophy than it does with regular Blight, but the actual damage is much shorter, and so you've got to keep landing Blight much more. You need to be a lot tankier to use this than you do to use normal Blight, and honestly, you need to be pretty tanky to use normal Blight. So my first thought is that this is something that's at the mediocre end of the spectrum for most people. Okay, so what have we got here? Blink Arrow of Bombarding Clones. This is the one that uses Rain of Arrows. Okay. Most of the time, this isn't going to be any different to using normal Blink Arrow. This is going to be something that is still just going to do the same thing you would normally do, but you're going to be getting small hits. Where I think this is going to be better would be if you get some sort of meaningful rider on your hits. Just trying to think of anything that really comes up with. You need, like, could you go Blink Arrow linked to Withering Touch? I think that works. I just had to check that. Withering Touch support. And Withering Touch support. So this is supports attack skills, 25% chance to inflict with it on hit. And yeah, this will work. This is, oh, hang on, it needs to be an attack skill, doesn't it? So is Blink Arrow an attack skill? We can check that over here. Yes, this is an attack skill. Okay, so the key use, I think, here is that if you are linking your Blink Arrow, which you're primarily using as a movement skill, to Withering Touch, I think this is going to be better. Otherwise, just having different minions doesn't really change much about the skill. We need to see something important, which is that the cooldown is... I expect this is going to be the same, but let's just confirm that. 3 seconds, yeah. So 3 seconds, 87% CDR versus... oh, only 40% CDR. So you're paying a big opportunity cost for that. So you are paying a big opportunity cost on Blink Arrow Bombarding Clones because it's going to be a slower thing. So there's a bunch of things you can do with this, but I think my first immediate use case is using it linked to anything along the lines of Withering Touch, so that you can just hit more of the screen with Wither stacks. But most of the time you're just using Blink Arrow to move. Now, Blink Arrow of Prismatic Clones was more interesting here. This is the one that causes your minions to deal 57% more damage and use Elemental Hit. Elemental Hit scales hard with gem level. So this is something that could be really good as a minion skill. This is something that has been a very corner case build for a very long time. Blink Arrow and Mirror Arrow builds. I assume there may be Mirror Arrow versions of this as well. Here what you want to do is stick your Blink Arrow or Prismatic Clones. You want to try and scale up the gem level really high on this. Unfortunately, I don't believe this is going to work with Crest of Desire, but it will work with a lot of other things. You're paying a big cost for it, but I do think the damage is there. Bronze Lithe is an exceptional idea. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, person with the very insightful username of Soap Tastes Okay. Everyone has their own attitudes to what's tasty and what isn't. Blink Arrow or Prismatic Clones, that is, yeah, Bronze Lithe. I like it a lot. I think that has a lot of potential there. You can deal a huge amount of damage. Multiple copies of Blink Arrow will share a cooldown, yes, but this is going to give you... that's going to get you to... realistically, what tags have we got here? I just need to bring up... I'm going to bring up POEDB in the background and have a quick look at the body armor dexterity section. I want to check what you can get in the way of Varlob Corrupted Implicits here. Universal +1. Duration, AoE, Aura, Curse, Trap Mines, Minion. Oh, you can get Minion. So... yeah, you could get... with a Miracle Double Corrupt, you could get a +2/+1 on this. So you could then get a level 29 without Empower on your Elemental Hit. That's going to do a lot of damage there. Bronze Lithe is going to be really awesome this league, I think. So for anyone that's not remembering this item, let's just bring it up so that you can share in the excitement here. Bronze Lithe is +5 to the level of socketed movement skills, 10% IAS, and it has damage with movement skills as well, which is a big stat, like you're getting a lot of increased damage on it. And then you've got some movement evasion rating and some evasion rating and some movement speed. So it's a really, really good chess piece. This is a tier 3 rarity unique, so it's something that there's usually a fair number of that drop in Vaal temples as well. Not necessarily for you personally, but across the league there'll be a bunch of them. So Blink Arrow of Prismatic Clones is one of 2 use cases that I've got in mind actually for Bronze Life this league. The other one would be Frostblink Igniter, which already exists. That's an interesting one as well. Cyrus Gloves are a possibility. There's like going to be a whole bunch of ways you can use this. You could also get a helmet with +2 to the level of minion skills, which something a lot of people don't realize. One of the ways you can craft those is by rolling +1, then using Tainted Divine Teardrops, and they can give you +2. So that's something else to keep in mind as an option as well. So there's a whole bunch of cool and interesting stuff there. It's going to be tough to make all of this work. You're going to need to have the Blink Arrow or Prismatic Clones. It's not going to use your weapon, is it? Oh, hang on. No, it does use your bow and quiver. Okay, sorry. Correction on that. It does not. It uses your bow and quiver, so you're going to want to have something that deals fast damage. Lots of cool stuff there. You're not so sure that the minions get any damage from damage with travel skills. That's a good point. I am working under the assumption that Elemental Hit's gem level is exactly equal to the gem level of the Blink Arrow gem that you're using. If that's incorrect, and this is something for an FAQ question for grinding your games, then if Abe is right, and this is not the way that it works, then that's important. So we'll need to seek out some clarification. And the key clarification we need here is, what is the gem level of Elemental Hit that Blink Arrow is tied to? What is it tied to? If it works the way that Sentinel of Radiance in the Ascendancy, Guardian Ascendancy works, then that is not based upon any gem levels. That is based upon your character level capped at 85. So that is one that we may need to ask about there. And yeah, I think Prayer, you could be LE Hit yourself. We'd have to just play around with that. So there's a lot of cool stuff to think about with respect to Blink Arrow Prismatic Clones. I like the idea of it, but I do need to get some clarification on exactly how that does work, because it's something that's not entirely certain so far. Bone Shatter of Complex Trauma. So this is one of those names that sounds full on. I need the hard numbers on Bone Shatter as well before I can do a comparison. So Bone Shatter is 85%, 250%, and it is minimal mana cost. Bone Shatter of Complex Trauma, so it's got the same key stats, and attacks enemies with a forceful melee strike that also hurts you. Successive uses will raise the damage dealt to both enemies and you. Stunning an enemy releases a damaging pulse, and it's adding flat physical 158 to 238, which is the same. Lose all trauma on reaching 10 trauma. Take 497 fizz damage per trauma, so it's a lot more. 20% more damage per trauma versus 5% more. And your pulse has 15% increased AoE based on stun duration. Okay, so 497 versus 194. So this is roughly 2.5 times the amount of trauma. And your average amount of trauma here is going to be 4.5, assuming that you're fighting long term with this. But you are going to be hitting 9 some of the time. In fact, you can potentially even... No, actually, you're going to take the 10th as well. So, yeah, the self-damage is going to be... The self-damage is mitigated by armor. You must have armor for this, or massive, massive, massive physical damage reduction there. So, you're taking... Basically, in terms of the amount of... hang on, the amount of life... I feel like this is better in default. I feel like Bone Shatter of Complex Trauma is a better default gem, but original quality, I'm calling it original quality, the original version of the gem, the non-transfigured version of the gem, is better if you are stacking trauma up into the 30s. If you're getting into the 30s and you're comfortable with the amount of self-damage you're taking, then that's going to be better than Bone Shatter of Complex Trauma. The Bone Shatter of Complex Trauma is going to be better if you are just clearing enemies quickly. I feel like this is the superior one for clear, because it's going to basically ramp faster, but it's not going to ramp as high. That's really the key thing that's going on here. And yeah, someone's saying in chat there that, as Kevin is saying in chat, that slow, bigger hits will work with this because you don't need to stack up very high. If you can get to 8, then that's fine. This is going to work pretty well. This is an interest, and do you want to get an exact speed to stay at 9 trauma all the time? I think that's a good option, yeah. So this is intriguing. This is definitely the I want to attack slower, and I want Bone Shatter to work with slower attacks. So the Ulna Tolax, if you ever wanted to use the Ulna Tolax in conjunction with Bone Shatter, then this is going to be the way to do it. Is it going to be better than base Bone Shatter? Probably not, because the Ulna Tolax isn't that good, but there'll be some cool stuff you can do there. And this is trying to get a little bit of slam feeling gameplay into a Bone Shatter build. Bone Shatter of Carnage. This is 275% of base, and so it's dealing 10% more damage, and it's got... Oh, what on earth? This is losing all of the trauma stuff on it. This is just like hit hard and don't worry about anything else. This is like, I want to play Bone Shatter on a Berserker, where I don't need to worry about my defenses. This is cool. Like, this is just a really simple version of the skill. In a lot of ways, this is the simplest version of it. It's completely eschewing the trauma section of the skill, gaining you 10% more damage in exchange for that. I think this is going to be something that's a very consistent performer, but that is, yeah, just new. It's just a new gem. It's something different. It's got the pulse. It's got the shockwave. Pulse has 20% increased AOE per 10 per. Oops, sorry about the flashbang there. That was me pressing the wrong button. I held shift when I was changing my thing there. 15% AOE based on stun duration, whereas this is 20% AOE based on stun duration. So there is a heavy strike. There is an element of this being like heavy strike, but it splashes when you stun. So this is heavy strike with shockwave on stun. Use trauma support to make it just Bone Shatter again. That's funny. But yeah, if you just want the basics, if you want to play this as a Berserker, this is the thing. I do think it is superior to Heavy Strike in terms of damage projection. So that is an interesting setup there. Burning Arrow of Vigor deals added fire damage equal to 24% of maximum life. Wow, that's okay. We'll just look up Burning Arrow. What's the stats on this? This is 70% for 300%. It's got flat fire on it, and that is 250 flat fire. And let's now just go back to Burning Arrow of Vigor. So instead of the 300, and instead of caring about your base weapon, so this can be used with a pretty bad weapon. It doesn't really care what weapon you've got. In fact, you might even use this with Widow Hail and a quiver that gives you a whole bunch of life. And 24% of maximum life. That is a huge amount of flat fire. This is cool. Like, is it just me, or is this one of the most bizarre things that's been in the game for a long time? But that this is just a staggering amount of flat added fire damage to add for a skill that is designed to ignite as well. This is a really weird thing that's doing a lot. Quill Rain is... Yeah, Quill Rain's an option. I'll just bring up Quill Rain for people that aren't... So, Quill Rain is here. We've got the... so, it does have 30% universal less damage, but you've got 100% IAS. So, for Ignite, that's probably actually worse. I'd want to get more damage with Ignite. I feel like... What bows are there that are particularly good with Ignite? Is Zoph's... The Zoph bow is still good. You got Zoph... Zoph's Inception is one of the two of them. I can never remember what they all are. So this is the one that's IPD, gain life base conversion. Okay, this is not useful. And there is a separate version of it, which is Zoph's Nurture. Zoph's Nurture is the one that has Ignite Proliferation built in. It has a bunch of extra investment in physical damage. But I do think Zoph's Nurture is worth a thought here. So you might consider using this in conjunction with Zoph's Nurture. That's definitely doing something useful for you. But probably, I feel like you might just go with the highest attack speed weapon you can. And yeah, then get yourself a whole bunch of extra damage. So let's just... Sorry, just getting rid of some of the trolls there. Okay, so there. I don't necessarily think this is a Solarine bow case. I think this is more of a... Although Solarine bow did get buffed in this patch, I think this is very much of a... You want to focus on the life aspect, and you want to focus on attack speed. Could you use Widowhail? I think Quivers can get a decent amount of IAS on them. I'll just confirm that. So let's go to modifiers on offhand is Quiver. So we can get 99 life, and increased attack speed goes to 16%. So with Widowhail, that can be 56%. Okay, that's perfect. But I feel like you want Widowhail and a Grandmastery and max life. And then like everything else you can get is a bonus. Like you want to get, you know, increased damage with bow skills, or dot multi with attacks actually. So yeah, dot multi with attacks, bow attacks fire an additional arrow. These are the sorts of mods you want. How many of them you can get is another question. There's a bunch of other options that are interesting as well. Like you could use this with, you use this with a bunch of other things. Like people are suggesting the idea of maybe even ignoring the Ignite aspect. And so there's a whole bunch of things you can play around with. And Widowhail has bad base attack speed, people are mentioning in chat. I still think maybe you go with it. Like, actually, come to think of it, attack speed doesn't matter that much because we're igniting. Maybe we want to go something else. I think the key is just dot multi with attacks. Bow attacks fire an additional arrow, and then life. And get those three, and then anything else is a bonus. And any Val implicits are a bonus. I think there's a lot of potential there. You want to just focus on getting as many things that can scale a total damage as you can. Do you want gem levels on Burning Arrow of Vigor? No, I don't think you do. It depends what the other mods are. It might be added fire damage equal to X% of your life might go up. In that case, maybe you do. But we'll need numbers on the gems at other levels. Okay, Caustic Arrow of Poison. So, Caustic Arrow of Poison seems like it's doing less chaos damage and has more interactions with poison. We'll bring up the numbers on this again. So, Caustic Arrow is 1927 base chaos damage per second, and it has 64% baseline damage versus Caustic Arrow of Poison. Yeah, so you don't have any chaos damage at all. It is just simply doing the chaos damage. Oh, the chaos damage is instantaneous with it. That's cool. So this is like essentially changing it into a projectile that inflicts one burst of poison. So it explodes on an enemy, kind of like a fireball, really. The way that fireball uses delivery mechanism for Ignite, it's doing the same thing but for poison, but from a bow. Added chaos damage. you need to have a bow that's doing chaos damage. You need a bunch of poison chance, and this is a totally different skill to the original version. This is no existing Caustic Arrow builds want this. If a Caustic Arrow build wants this, it's a totally different build. And now this is something that I think you want to compare to poison projectile skills like Cobra Lash or Venom Jar. Although they're not always used to poison, I feel like that is the most comparable thing there. Darkscorn is a good reminder. I had forgotten that item existed for a second then. So Darkscorn is a tier 2 rarity unique, and it has a lot of poison synergies. 20% chance of poisons inflicted with this weapon to deal 300% more damage. This mod essentially means 60% more chaos damage. It also has this difficult to use but very powerful defensive mod, which is that your character, 25% of physical damage you take is converted into chaos. And while this is bad when your chaos resistance is negative, it very quickly becomes very strong. So this is something that is that's a really good potential starting setup. Okay, let's just keep dealing with the trolls one sec while we do that. And there we go. Sorry about that. One of the drawbacks of having a very large stream is that you start attracting people who have got nothing better to do than be an obnoxious troll. So they just get hidden so that their rubbish won't be seen. But that's where, essentially, if you don't take out the trash, then unfortunately the whole place ends up stinking like trash. Okay, where were we here? So this is one that requires a whole bunch of thought on it. So the way that poison works, you'll need 100% chance to poison, and you'll need to be hitting an enemy really fast to get a lot of poisons on them. Kind of feel like I want to check how this works with Ballistae, and also there's that Deadeye Occupying Forces node that people don't really use at the moment, but that might work well with this. So let's go through the rest of what we've got here. Cleave of Rage is next. This is going to be... what are we doing here? This is adding radius based upon rage. And that's a lot of rage. Okay, let's get the hard numbers on Cleave first. Not Val Cleave, regular Cleave. So we have here... we have attack physical damage. We have 237% of base damage and 80% attack speed, and this is striking with both weapons, with 60% of the damage from both weapons. So, what do we got with New Cleave? We're hitting harder, and we are cleaving with. Oh, okay. You're forced to hit with both. So you got 300% base weapon. And you must use one axe and one sword, which is awkward, but there is a bit of synergy for that playstyle. You lose out on the flat fizz, and you're dealing 60% of each weapon, so the damage is pretty comparable to baseline Cleave. But you're getting this rage bonus out of it. 2 rage if this skill hits any enemies, and you then get all this extra range. I feel like this is going to be one of those skills that at the start of the map it's going to feel awful. This is something you want for Mesa map specifically, where you can rush to the boss, you can build up your rage pretty high on the boss, then you've got the extra AoE when you're running around the rest of the map. And so that's something that you can get a bunch of extra... that's something you can get a bunch of extra damage with there. Alright, so let's just think on this. We'll just do that. So that's going to be a whole... yeah. There is the Rigwold's weapons, that's a good point. Rigwold's... I can't think of them. There's a couple of them there, but there's a bunch of things you could play around with. That's actually a good idea. The Rigwold's axe and the Cirrus sword. Is it a lot of rage? Yeah, it is a lot of rage. It is a lot of rage here. So the 300% effectiveness is a little bit of a trick because cleave is 237%, but you're dealing 60% damage with each weapon. Oh, hang on. 60% of damage with each weapon combined. Oh, wow. Hang on. Yeah, I'm wrong. I misread that. So cleave, it's just miles better than cleave. Granted, you don't get the flat fizz, but you're at endgame. You've got reasonable weapons. Yeah, I think this is just a massive upgrade on cleave. Cleave is better to start with because when your weapons suck, Cleave of Rage isn't doing much damage. But it looks like there's no cooldown on rage generation. And as Enraged Monkey is mentioning in chat there, the new heist bases got really big buffs on their, like the heist axe, Disapprobation axe I think it's called. That does a lot more damage. So that gives you a lot of rage generation. In fact, let's just go to the patch notes here. So this is the Disapprobation axe. Oh, it's Psychotic axe that is now 20 to maximum rage. Basically, if you haven't looked at this, all of these high spaces, all of them are getting buffs, and some of them are looking like they're going to be really, really good now. Not quite every single one of them, but definitely have a look at this. I discussed it in the live stream about the whole thing. I particularly like the look of the Transfer Attuned Spirit Shield now. It's losing energy shield, but it's picking up way more chance to block, and that thing needs chance to block. So it's miles better, and the Psychotic Axe definitely works well with Cleave now. Anyway, let's jump on to Cold Snap of Power. So this is going to have a cooldown that's bypassable via using a power charge, and it is 1440 to 2160, which is an average of 1800 cold damage. And it has a 50% chance to gain a power charge on a crit, on a critical. That's interesting. And it has a base radius of 2.5 meters. Let's just have a quick look at what Cold Snap looks like in general. So Cold Snap is the same amount of damage. It's got its cold damage. It's got its base damage per second. This is, this no longer. This entirely eschews the usual cold dot aspect. This is all going all in on the hit. I didn't notice that at first. This is way different. This is like a totally different skill. This is like I want to fire an Ice Nova somewhere else. 10% base crit as well. So that's a huge, huge amount of stuff that's going on there. 320% effectiveness of added damage is probably the same. Yeah, it is. So this is... I wonder what the best way to use this is going to be. That's a lot of damage to use, but you've got to be generating your power charges pretty quickly in order to use it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do it. Yeah, better remote. It's a remote Ice Nova in some ways. It's looking like it's a... it's intriguing. I like the look of this. I don't think this is a main skill. 3-second cooldown is a lot, and if you don't get a power charge on the first cast, you're in a lot of trouble. You could use it with Doedra's Elixir or something similar, but that's going to be at the dicey end as well. And yeah, the question about Spell Cascade is interesting. My reading on this is that yes, this works with Spell Cascade, Awaken Spell Cascade. It just costs you 1 power charge to use it if you're off cooldown. So that'll just get you a tremendous amount of spread. And yeah, there's a good chance to get power charges on crits. So unless you get very unlucky, you will be you probably can use this as a map clear skill, but you're not using this as your sole thing on a boss. And yeah, like people are saying, no heat shiver for the cold skills, especially a hit-based skill like this. I feel like this is higher numbers than would have been possible if heat shiver still existed. Let's jump on to Consecrated Path of Endurance next. So this is going to be the same sort of concept of teleporting to a space, creating consecrated ground. You can spend an endurance charge to bypass cooldown. Can't multi-strike it, and you're required to use certain weapons. But in exchange for that, you are getting 50% conversion to fire, 30% more damage against close targets. And then you've got this AoE and attack damage per endurance charge. 180% base damage. Let's just go Consecrated Path. 230% and 80. So let's just compare that. So base damage is quite a bit lower on Consecrated Path of Endurance. And we have 30% more damage to hits to closer targets versus... still have that, but then 10% more attack damage per endurance charge. So to break even, you need to have... If you've got 3 endurance charges, Consecrated Path of Endurance is superior to base Consecrated Path, unless there's something else I'm missing at the moment. So 4 seconds, 50% conversion versus 4 seconds, 50% conversion. Yeah, so if you've got 3 or more endurance charges on your character consistently, Consecrated Path of Endurance is superior to the base version. This is going to scale high if you can get this going up. If you can really get this going, this is going to really do a lot here. This is pre-recorded according to Colin White, so people can make their own mind up on that. There you go. Apparently it's pre-recorded and everything is a conspiracy. I actually worked this one out with Colin. So Colin and I, before we recorded this, we were working together on this, and he specified the exact time that I was meant to come in and tell you that it was pre-recorded. But yeah, I am responding to chat less than usual today because I'm just going to trying to go through everything here. One important question's just come up there that are these going to apply in standard? Yes, you'll be able to earn these gems in standard as well. So if you're a standard player, that's the thing. The new Consecrated Path of Endurance has a cooldown. Thank you for pointing out things that I wasn't noticing there. So the cooldown on it is 2 seconds, and it requires expending an endurance charge to bypass. Thank you for pointing that out. It's good to have people in chat correcting me when I make mistakes. Again, this is all pre-recorded. This is all organised with Colin and a couple of other people before. That everything, when we pre-recorded it, I deliberately made some mistakes, and we then decided to get those in there. So... yeah, that's a good point. You need to be generating endurance charges fast for this to work. I feel like this is a Juggernaut build. There is definitely a Juggernaut build around this. If you can get... and also a Slayer build, I think. Is it Masterful Form is on the Slayer, right? Let me just... probably the wiki is where we want to be. Masterful Form. This is... maximum endurance is equal to your maximum frenzies, +1 maximum frenzy, and it is in the Slayer. So... this doesn't help you with your generation of endurance charges, but I'm sure that there's a lot of ways to do that. I think, yeah, there's some real potential here with this for both a Consecrated Path build that is on a Slayer Ascendancy and on the Juggernaut Ascendancy. Juggernaut probably the better one. I also think this is one to watch. What happens with that Juggernaut node that causes you to be drip-fed endurance charges after you take a hit? How does that interact with charms? There's already, I think, there's already ways to get that on cluster jewels. There's already ways to get that stat on a bunch of other things. I think there's just a whole lot of things that are coming together to make this into a reliable build, and I am tempted to play Consecrated Path of Endurance on a Slayer now. I don't think you necessarily want to league start this, but at the very least you want to be able to function on baseline Consecrated Path for a while. I think your bare minimum is going to be to have, I think it's an armor cluster jewel that grants you the drip feed of endurance charges after suffering a hit in conjunction with Doedrae's elixir. That's your starting point, and you need to have enough chaos resistance that you can use Doedrae's elixir without dying. That's your starting point. Doedrae's elixir does count as a hit for mechanics like that, so you will then get an instant amount of endurance charges to get started in the map at the expense of losing a lot of life, and you'll be able to start Consecrated Pathing around. You'll then need to probably have endurance charge on melee stun. I think you're going to need that. And there's some cool stuff there. There's definitely some really intriguing stuff that you could play around with. Contagion of Subsiding is next. So this is going to inflict chaos damage over time. The enemy dies while afflicted. The debuff spreads to other nearby enemies, but each time it spreads, it loses some of its damage. So 1279 chaos damage per second. Let's just get the baseline damage here is, wow, way lower. 235.9. But it's going to fall off really hard. Duration is 5 seconds. Contagion is something that just spreads all the way through a map. Yeah, of subsiding. So it only deals... This is just miles better, isn't it? 850 milliseconds versus 600 milliseconds, so that's worse. You're going to be recasting it many times in comparison to baseline Contagion. But I feel like this is something you cast once every 4 or 5 screens, and then it does a lot of clear. What's the transfer radius? 1.9. What's the transfer radius on this? 1.9. Does anyone disagree that this is an upgrade? Does anyone disagree that this is an upgrade on Contagion? Like, I'm sure there is going to be some case where it's not, but this feels like it is a upgrade overall. It is only 3/4 damage, but like even if it spreads 3 times, so your first one transfers at 75%, your second one at 56%, your third one at 42%, your fourth one is still over 30%, and even your fifth one is doing more. Even your fifth one is doing more damage here, I think. Unless, I guess it's not. I don't know how far it's gonna, how many times it's gonna need to spread. Yeah, I kind of need to just yeah, I need to think more on this, because the more I think about it, the more it's like you can get up to 5 transfers pretty quickly. And so this is like, you know what this is feeling like? Val Firestorm. Not Val Firestorm, Val Flame Blast. In the sense that there's an area that it's going to do absolutely devastating damage towards the center, and then a bit further out it's going to do less and less damage. That seems like it's the way it's going to go. It'll still spread at 0 damage, yeah. I feel like once you're spreading beyond a screen, that's when it starts falling below Contagion. And I think that this is going to spread too many times. The more I think about it, in a breach environment, this is going to start spreading too many times. In an abyss environment, this is going to spread too many times and it's going to fall off. It's an intriguing skill, and it's certainly something that addresses Contagion's inability to deal single target damage. But it looks like it's a really intriguing overall thing. Now, you're saying it cuts the damage on the target from Essence Drain and Blight when it spreads. That may be true. That's something we've got to check. I think this is going to be better in some ways, worse in others. A really interesting question that's come up from Siddharth in chat is asking Burning Arrow, the new version of Burning Arrow, the life-based one, is this something that's useful to supplement Righteous Fire? That'd be a completely different build to what we have. Righteous Fire is often used with Fire Trap and occasionally with Searing Bond. Righteous Fire spell damage boost does provide a more damage multiplier to your spells. So it works on Fire Trap, it works on Searing Bond, it doesn't work on Burning Arrow or Vigor. But this definitely does have a lot of things Righteous Fire wants going for it. I think one of the things that's going to keep this down is just an inability, as far as I'm aware, on bows and quivers to get dot multi that works with your Righteous Fire. So you have dot multi that for attack skills, and I think that's the same on your bow. So for that reason, I'm not sold on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone makes it work. And the hit damage on Fire Trap is interesting. Hit damage on Fire Trap can be used to ignite, and then it can do quite a bit of damage. But there's a bunch of weird stuff that you can do. You can definitely make your Righteous Fire builds work without resistances there in the shield slot. Yeah, if there's an alternate, version of Righteous Fire that deals attack damage, that would be incredible. Anyways, let's jump down to what we have at the moment. Contagion of Transference is next. So this is dealing. So this has got an enemy is hit while affected by contagion, the debuff spreads. So here you need to actually inflict a hit in order to spread the damage, whereas here you just need to kill the enemy. This is harder to transfer. As much as this is called of transference, this is going to transfer less. It's a slower cast time, same as Contagion of Subsiding, and it's dealing considerable amounts of damage, 2.2 meter radius, but you need to be inflicting hits, and Contagion builds that currently exist are not inflicting hits on trash monsters. So this is going to land on a trash monster sometimes, and then you're going to just kill that monster without hitting it. That's going to be the problem there. So that's the thing that's the thing that you've got to then focus in. Cracklance of so that's the thing that you've got to then assess whether it's any better or not. I feel like this doesn't work on any existing builds, but might work on something new. And I feel like this is particularly good if you're dealing with multiple bosses simultaneously. Then it's just like fire at once and then just keep, yeah. If you are using a skill that hits like Soul Rend, base duration is 5 seconds. I could see this working with Soul Rend. Again, in a multi-boss environment. That said, it's Chaos Dot. Chaos Dot's in a bad way at the moment. Profane Bloom. Actually, yeah, Profane Bloom is an interesting thought. That hits. So that's an option. But this is not enough to make Soul Rend not bad. Soul Rend was serviceable back before they changed Wither. But after they changed Wither and all the sources of Wither effect, I don't think it's in a good spot at all. Cracklance of Branching is next. So just having a quick look at what we've got here. So Elliot's got a question there on support stuff. YouTube's cut is lower than Twitch's. So YouTube's cut of direct donations and stuff like that is lower than Twitch's cut. Cracklance of Branching is going to release a beam which has increased branching angle and more area of effect. Loses the Intensify shenanigans. So let's just bring up Crackling Lance, because this is a very different gem. So Crackling Lance is 650 milliseconds, 6% crit, 165% base damage, versus 750 milliseconds and 260%. So that is 15% worse. So yeah, Cracklance of Branching is considerably more damage, but this has just got the area of effect and the branching angle, versus this having the Intensify shenanigans. And so this is essentially, I guess you would say that this is like Cracklance, except you're jammed into, it's like you're jammed into having 1 intensity all the time. People agree with that. Maybe 1.5 intensity all the time. But it's also slower. I am of the opinion that Crackling Lance is looking pretty good this league, but that all the things that make it good, which is the intensity mechanics with it, Cracklance of Branching doesn't have that, and I am of the opinion that this is a bad gem. It doesn't have enough damage to justify that cast time, unless it's just got the damage projection to make up for it. So let's compare that to Wave of Conviction, shall we? Wave of Conviction has much worse damage projection. Wave of Conviction is 330% damage for 700 millisecond cast time, and this is dealing, instead of 330, this is dealing 260. So Crackling Lance plus a real support is basically doing the same damage as Wave of Conviction plus faster casting. And so yeah, I'm of the opinion that this is looking worse. It can be triggered, that's a good point. So Crackling Lance of Branching may be the way to go there. Why did I fail to... Why did that not work before? That should work. Okay, so... Yeah, okay, cool, that should be fixed. Excellent, that's fixed. One less troll. Okay. So that's the... Yeah, that is the case. That is going to be something to be used in conjunction with triggering it. Crackling Lance Mines is an interesting thought. What else is there that people use typically with mines? Like Hex Blast, obviously, but let's just bring up Hex Blast just for some numbers on it. So Hex Blast is 340% damage. I feel like that's just better, hey. And 100% more damage. I just feel like if you're going to be using triggered stuff, then probably Hex Blast is still superior. So this is potentially useful as a clear skill. It does hit a lot of the screen. One thing I am interested in is how well this feels like it works if you were to use this on an Elementalist Ignite character, or even on a non-Elementalist with Stormfire. I think that does some interesting, weird stuff there. Crackling Lance of Disintegration. So this has chance to shock and maximum effective shock. What we need to know here is what is the quality on this, because everything else that has maximum effective shock is nuts. This solves my problem of having to use Shock Nova on the build that I was thinking of playing second in this league, which is a build that's going to use Lightning Conduit in what's the name of that helmet? Crest of Desire. So degree of quality stacking there. And this, if that 20% maximum effective shock is the quality bonus, then this is going to be incredible for that. This is 300% effectiveness of added damage, and it is a very tight beam, it looks. I feel like this is potentially really good. Like, this is just your classic lightning bolt power fantasy. It's like blast in a line in front of you. None of the clunkiness of Divine Ire. This is also something to consider using with any sort of trigger as well. But yeah, this looks like it's cool. Yeah, the alt gems are being nerfed in standard as well. So this is a lot of damage. This looks really cool. Cremation of Exhuming. A targeted corpse explodes, dealing area damage and turning into a volcanic geyser, which will repeatedly unleash projectiles sequentially over the surrounding area and detonate nearby corpses for a duration. Corpse explosions are not affected by modifiers by spell damage and cannot be reflected. So let's just bring up... I still need to play Cremation sometime. I've literally never played Cremation. So it is, there's this chain reaction aspect is new in terms of the base text. This is 5% and 5%, 100% and 600 milliseconds versus 5%, 800 milliseconds and also 100%. Okay, we got a whole bunch of fire damage being added there, which is the same. 4 projectiles, 3 geysers. This is 4 projectiles, only 1 geyser on this one. And the explosion deals base fire damage equal to 6% of the corpse life and explode a nearby corpse when firing projectiles. Oh, that's cool. So this is just going to basically... This is like you cast 1 cremation and then it keeps casting additional ones for you. And I agree, this feels like it's doing a... I feel like this is doing a... like it has a support gem built in. A lot of these do feel like that. Yeah, so this has got a lot in common with the old Phantasmal, people are saying, and I think that's right. So let's just bring up Cremation's stats here. So Phantasmal Cremation was the one that also blew up other things as well. So it was additional chance to... Yeah, so this is Phantasmal 50 quality, but also with a number of other changes made to it. You can only get one geyser, but that 1 geyser is going to be doing a whole bunch of things. So this is looking like it's really strong. Like, this is basically Phantasmal Cremation back, and I think that this will be widely used by people who like Cremation. As I say, it's a skill I need to learn to play at some point because I've never played it. Cremation of the Volcano. This is 6 geysers instead of 3, and it also has a higher cast time and only 70% effectiveness of added damage. So they've really gone and tone the numbers on this down. Fires projectiles every 1 second. Base duration of 2.5. Base duration is 8 seconds on that version. What's the base duration here? 8 seconds. So base duration is very short here. 4 projectiles, 6 geysers at a time. And we have 4 projectiles, 3 geysers at a time. So this is just more burst if you've got the corpses. I think that's what it's going to go. You're definitely going to have a whole bunch of... you're definitely going to need to have a whole bunch of the things... Oh, no corpse requirement. Oh, that's... Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, cool. That's a clarification we were looking for there. So that is the key difference. This is going to make this a lot easier to use. And yeah, that's basically really interesting. That's a very, very different gem. And so here you can just create the geyser, set it off, and then keep going. Anyways, let's jump on to Cyclone of Tumult next. I'm actually going to have to wind up in the next 30 minutes, so have a look. But yeah, that thing of the volcano, cremation of the volcano definitely is a boss killing setup because it's just going to drop a whole bunch of projectiles on them. It's an orb, but you're able to have 6 geysers at a time. I don't know what's going on there because normally you can only have 1 orb. Okay. Cyclone of Tumult. So this channels a skill to move towards a targeted location while spinning constantly, attacking enemies in an area around you. While channeling this, you cannot be knocked back. Attack Fizz is added. So let's just get the hard numbers on Cyclone again. No one has these committed to memory. 300% base attack speed, 59% of base attack damage. So this is attack speed is much slower on Cyclone of Tumult. And you gain more attack speed per stage. Okay, so this is like, you need to get a lot of stages on this for it to be going well. I feel like this is going to be one of those ones where if there is a breakpoint at gem level 21 for a 7th stage, that's going to be tremendous. This might be one where you have to get an extra gem level on it in order for it to feel good. Less movement speed per stage, so you must use the Stampede, as someone's already mentioned in chat there. But basically this is a cyclone that becomes more intense and slower as you move. But as I think it's definitely going to be Stampede or Replica Stampede are the only viable boots with this. And other than that, I think that's basically Cyclone of Tumult. It's probably strictly better once you've got the Stampede. I think, or strictly better is the wrong term because you do need to build up to it. But the key thing is going to be what that gem level 21 breakpoint is. If it is a breakpoint to get your 7th stack. I think it is still 7 on Cyclone. 7 at 21 on Cyclone. I'm going to confirm that for base Cyclone. It's am I remembering right? 21, and you might even want to go to 26. You know, that's Bronze Lithe. Bronze Lithe may work with that. So this is going to be worthwhile thinking of. And yeah, good point. People are saying Juggernaut Ascendancy Charm as well is another option. There's a lot of things you can do. I am thinking of Stampede, but yeah, people are right. There are other options that I wasn't thinking of. So Detonate Dead of Scavenging. This was revealed in the original teaser. So this is the Detonate Dead that does not work on corpses that you have created yourself. It deals double the damage Detonate Dead would do if the target is, if you're doing ailments, and it deals 5 times the damage Detonate Dead would do if you are doing non-ailment, if you're doing hit. So there's a lot of damage there, but Detonate Dead of Scavenging is not a main skill because you cannot rely on this. You have to be generating corpses, unless you're in some weird environment. Like, you might be able to do this properly in the Simulacrum, although you might run out of corpses against Kosis. So that would be bad. But Detonate Dead of Scavenging, definitely, it's an interesting gem, but I don't think this is necessarily the best thing there. Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction. This sounds like it might just be something related to Val Detonate Dead, but we'll see. Targeted corpse deals spell damage to enemies around the corpse, as well as blowing up the corpse, dealing fire damage. The explosion is not affected by modifiers as spell damage and cannot be reflected. This will continue to target other corpses in the area with a shorter delay This is just basically Val Detonate Dead, isn't it? Until it has destroyed 8 corpses. So, firstly, Detonate Dead baseline is 15% to detonate 1 additional corpse. 7.9% and 2.6 meters. Whereas this is, where are we? This is 5% and 2.6 meters. Let's just check if there's a if there is a Val Detonate Dead here. So this is the same sort of chain reaction, right? This is going to be targeted corpse deals spell damage to enemies surrounding the corpse, as well as causing the corpse to explode, dealing fire damage. Explosion is not modified with an increasing delay towards each one, whereas I think this is a decreasing delay. Yeah, shorter delay. This is capped at 8 corpses, and Val Detonate Dead obviously does more. But this is the core feeling of Val Detonate Dead, but something you can set off on cue, and as a result, it's been substantially weakened. Yeah, it is the case that the new Ascendancy spawns enemies that you can explode, yes. So you can definitely do that. Discharge of Misery. So this is going to discharge all of your charges to deal damage everything nearby. This is a base damage. This is 750 millisecond cast time. This looks like it is the version of Discharge that was previously based upon the Endless Misery gem. So Discharge is 600% and 1918 is the lightning damage. So let's just have a look here. Instead of 1918 damage, it's 584. Effectiveness of added damage is basically 70% less damage, but in exchange for that, you have a cast time rather than a cooldown. So this has, they both have a cast time of 750 milliseconds, but there is a cooldown of 2 seconds on real discharge. And this has 3 meter radius. This is going to be 2 meter radius. 15% area per charge removed. So Discharge of Misery is, yeah, basically just the Endless Misery support gem. So that's going to be the version here. It's a really interesting question about Val versions of these gems. The answer is I don't know. The answer is I don't know if there's going to be a, say, Val Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction. I expect they're just the base version, but, so for instance, if you had Val Detonate Dead, if you had Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction and you applied a Val Orb to it and it became the Val version, you would have Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction as the top skill, and the bottom skill would be Val Detonate Dead. That's the way it worked with alternate quality gems, but I'm not sure that that's right. No less damage with ailments on this, but the less damage with ailments is sort of baked in, because Discharge has 60% less damage with ailments. This just has 70% less damage than Discharge. So it doesn't need that. It's not required. Actually, if you're wanting to ignite, you probably still want to use base Discharge instead. They said they are the base damage, someone's saying in chat there. So, yeah, okay, cool. There's a few clarifications there that it's going to be the original Val version. So what I thought was the case has apparently been authoritatively stated as right. I don't think this is an intention to phase out Val gems. Val gems have been popular. There's a couple of new support things for them as well. If I can just find it. Yarmak's Accord. This is being changed to function differently. So there's clearly some interest in keeping Val skill gem support happening in the game. I don't think they're looking to get rid of them. Does a more area mod scale of proliferation? I'm not sure. I can't answer that off the top of my head. I think the answer is no, but I'm not convinced I'm right. So someone might know that authoritatively in chat, but if not, Path of Building probably will. Now we have Divine Ire of Holy Lightning. So this is 50% conversion to lightning. Damages 14 nearby enemies when you gain stages. So Divine Ire has been overhauled a lot. So this is losing all of the this is just a totally different skill. Let's have a quick look at the numbers. 203 to 305 physical damage, so let's call it 254. Divine Ire of Holy Lightning is doing more physical damage than that. Now, 50% conversion to lightning versus, I think this is... Oh no, this is 50% to lightning. Damages 5 nearby enemies when you gain charges, and then has 240, 100. And then this has got less area. So this is like a tighter packed. This is just like a tighter packed Divine Ire. What else has changed? 220 milliseconds. 60, yeah. So the cast time is the same. The beam is... So instead of the beam, it's going to be... Oh, it's just the burst around you. Oh, that's... Yeah, that's cool. Okay, thank you for clarifying that I was misreading this. So this changes the way Divine Ire works. Instead of charging up a beam in front of you, this is going to be a point-blank AoE centered on you. So this is very different. It's a burst instead of a beam, and it's just something completely different, very tightly packed. 60% more damage with ailments per stage after the first. You'll notice I'm more interested in that than I am on anything else, as opposed to 100% more damage with ailments per stage. So you're looking at, it is a maximum of 10 stages. So at 10 stages, you are doing 495% of base damage, whereas with Divine Ire of Holy Lightning, you are dealing... you are still at 10 stages, so with 10 stages, you're looking at dealing 420%. Oh, it's actually less. Is that right? It's actually less. Yeah, less damage with ailments. Okay. I'm not sold on this. I'm not sold on Divine Ire of Holy Lightning. It does more hit damage and less ailment damage than the original version. It does hit more nearby enemies when you gain stages, so maybe that's an advantage, but I'm not sold on this gem. I'm not sold on this at all. Divine Ire of Disintegration. This sounds like it should be slower, but it's not. It's harder hitting. Still 50. This is hitting really hard, but it's also not gaining you any additional hitting nearby enemies when you gain stages. This is going all in on the final release. And otherwise, yeah, this is just basically sacrificing the tick damage that Divine Ire does to nearby targets in order to go all in on that final beam in front of you. And it does the beam component better than base Divine Ire. Except it's and yes, it does. It's more damage with hits and more damage with ailments. Like, everything is more. This is a really hard hitting beam, and this feels like something you probably want to play hit-based spell totem. Divine Ire of Disintegration, hit-based spell totem, looks like it's going to do a lot of damage. So that's another build to consider. Divine Ire of Disintegration, spell totem, critical strikes. Maybe even non-crit. So that's cool. Yeah, definitely better version for lasers. Better version for totems. Okay, Dominating Blow of Inspiring. So this is going to... Well, the version that we already had on this with Absolution, the Inspiring, was that it gave you more damage. So let's see what we've got here. Increases and reductions to minion damage also apply to this skill at 250% of their value. This is exactly that. You are sacrificing some of your dominant sentinels, I believe. So this is Dominating Blow. I believe you are sacrificing some of your minions. Yes, a 9-3-1 40% CDR versus 6-3-1 and 0% CDR. And so this is more damage for the actual Dominating Blow strike itself. This feels like... I know that we're well past the game where something that's functionally an auto attack is a strong skill, but this feels like the craziest scaling we've had on a weapon, on a default attack type skill in a long time. Like, you can do... If you just ignore all of the minions aspects of this, but you scale minion damage on your character, you're going to get a lot of damage out of this. A lot of damage. A lot of damage. That said, I don't think that's where we want to be in the game. Like, we're not interested in Viper Strike, and Viper Strike also does a lot of damage. So this is one of those weird skills. I don't see many uses for it, but it's just cool. Double Strike of Impaling. Ooh, killing blows cause impales on enemies to reflect damage to surrounding enemies. So this means that if you've if you kill an enemy on like the 4th or 5th strike, it's then going to kill all the weak enemies around it when you pop it off. Let's just get the numbers on double strike to compare that. Double strike. This is 80% attack speed, 140% damage versus... Oh, hang on. No, we're looking at the wrong one. 80% attack speed, 140% damage. Okay. So 40% impale and 40% impale effect versus all of the bleed shenanigans. 25% and a bunch of flat fears. Okay, so this is quite a lot worse than base double strike when you've got bad weapons. But if you've got an excellent weapon, 40% impale effect may well get it over the line. You need to be doing this pure fizz, but you're playing double strike, you need to be doing pure fizz anyway. I think that this is, yeah, definitely worse early in progression. You would not use this at level 60, even if you had it at level 60. But if you've got a good weapon, then it could get there. Double strike of momentum is next, and this here is providing 95% of damage. This is 14% more attack speed per stage, maximum of 10 stages. All stages lost when you move. So this is not momentum. This is stand still and keep swinging harder. This is terrible until you build up a lot. This is absolutely terrible until you build up a lot on this. But once you do build up a lot, then at that point you start getting a lot of extra damage out of this. 14% feels almost enough for this to be worth trying in my mind. I don't think it's quite there. Looks like it's built for trauma stacking. Yeah, I agree. This is something you could use with trauma support. I just feel it needs more clear. Like I feel like if I was going to force myself to use a strike with no additional built-in damage projection, I just can't see why I would not use Viper Strike. Obviously, you build Viper Strike differently, but let's just go. Viper Strike is dealing, like, you know, it's got all this massive chance to poison. Like, I just feel it's really hard to compete with Viper Strike in that role. Granted, this is going to be hitting really fast. And how does this compare to Blade Flurry? That's a good question. Not that I'm a fan of Blade Flurry in the current state of the game either, but Blade Flurry of Incision here, and 160% attack, 160% speed, 49% base damage, and yeah, this looks better than that Blade Flurry. Let's go to the base Blade Flurry. Base Blade Flurry, which is also yeah, this scales higher than Blade Flurry. Sorry, than Blade Flurry does. So there's a number of things. There's a bunch of really cool stuff. Yeah, there's another 60-ish gems to come, at least. So this is 39 of them. We're only up to D in the alphabet, and we got a bit further. So there's a lot of cool stuff here. In terms of what the standouts were, let's just have a quick look at that before I need to go. Like, I think Animate Guardian of Smiting might be a standout because it looks so cool in that video, but that is just me speculating at the moment. I'm not sure on that. Arc of Oscillating is cool. There's a lot of damage in this. And especially if you can get to another chain breakpoint. Let's just get what the next chain breakpoint is. Beyond, at least if it mirrors existing arc. So chains is coming at 31. I wonder if how doable is 31 without Crest of Desire, or do you just want Crest of Desire maybe? Because you're getting so much out of it. I feel like you do. I feel like this is something that, yeah, if you can get to 31 on this, it's really good, assuming that it has the same scaling of chains. That's going to be something we'll need to check out. Barrage of Volley Fire is just a hybrid between Barrage and Split Arrow. Blade Blast of Dagger Detonation is cool. I don't know that this is great, but I do think it's cool here. What else do you have? Blade Flurry of Incision was a hard no. Blade Trap of Greatswords is cool. This looks actually fairly strong, potentially. Blade Trap of Laceration is just something that you've just got to test. The numbers on it looked underwhelming, but I'm very open to being wrong on that. The Blade Fall versions I wasn't sold on, but there may be a use for them. Blade Storm of Uncertainty looked really solid. The various Blight changes didn't jump out at me. Blink Arrow of Prismatic Clones. This is my one that I've got the questions about. What gem level is Elemental Hit? Is it the same as Blink Arrow of Prismatic Clones as gem level? If it is, then this is great. Bone Shatter of Complex Trauma for slow attack weapons is really good, but it's not something that everyone wants. Bone Shatter of Carnage is just heavy strike with Shockwave built in, but it is definitely usable. This is something that you could play on a Berserker and be quite good. Burning Arrow of Vigor is probably the standout as something that's going to transform the way people build and looks really interesting. Kasukara of Poison with Dark Scorn could be interesting. Cleave of Rage looks reasonably good for a Cleave gem. Cold Snap of Power is cool. And then we have Consecrated Path of Endurance. This was a standout as well. This looks really amazing. Numbers on it are good. The endurance charge generation is going to be tricky to manage, but I think it's doable. And there's just so much attack damage there that you're getting, like, so much damage on this. The Contagions didn't jump out at me. Crackling Lance of Branching. The Crackling Lances without Intensify weren't so interesting. Cremation of the Volcano will get used. It's not exciting, but it's strong enough to use. Cyclone of Tumult is a definite build-around puzzle that is very solvable. Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction seems amazing, like in terms of just really strong utility, just generally a really strong skill. Doesn't work on existing Detonate Dead builds, they'll still use Val. Discharge of Misery is serviceable. Divine Eye of Holy Lightning looked bad to me. Divine Eye of Disintegration for totems is a definite standout. This is going to go on totems. Dominating Blow of Inspiring. Absolution of Inspiring was interesting. Dominating Blow of Inspiring was not. And the double strikes were double strikes and therefore aren't looking that great. That's my initial thoughts. I do need to get going. I have a hard time limit today of now plus 15 minutes. I've got a couple of things I need to do IRL before then. So thank you all for tuning in. I will say, may your Varlobs have interesting results. And do keep in mind, as people are saying in chat, you cannot spend minimum power charges. For this Consecrated Path, you need to actually spend the endurance charges. Some people are thinking Farrell's Fur version, replica Farrell's. I was thinking of... my thoughts were to endurance charge drip feed from various sources, like I think it's called Enduring Composure, the Cluster Jewel notable, a bunch of things like that. There's a lot of solutions for it, but you need to have actual endurance charges. Anyways, I will try to put out a new video summary at some point today, and then